Today is the National Day of Prayer, on which the President of the United States is required by law to issue a proclamation saying it's the National Day of Prayer and suggesting that Americans might do some praying today. In a country founded in part so that religion would be a private matter for every citizen, in a country in which the government is constitutionally prohibited from endorsing any particular religious observation over any other, or even endorsing the idea of having a religion over not having a religion, having an official, legal National Day of Prayer in America has always been a little awkward. But religious forces have long been powerful here and have long sought to yoke the power of the state to particular forms of religious expression. In 1808, in response to entreaties that the U.S. adopt a National Day of Prayer, Thomas Jefferson wrote, quote, "Civil powers alone have been given to the President of the U.S. and no authority to direct the religious exercises of its constituents." President James Madison, who came after Jefferson as the next president, wrote a whole essay of 5 reasons why a president shouldn't issue a prayer proclamation, saying that would imply the erroneous idea of a national religion. He argued that governments are not qualified to give anyone advice on their religious practice. But Harry Truman nevertheless signed the National Day of Prayer into law in the early 50s, and now it's the law. And today, President Barack Obama followed that law and issued a proclamation, quite literally calling on Americans to pray today. The proclamation literally says that, "I call upon Americans to pray." That instruction from the president to engage in religious practice today notwithstanding, conservative Christian groups say they are upset that the president didn't do more. See, George W. Bush used Prayer Day as an opportunity to invite conservative Christian groups to the White House. Barack Obama did not do that, leading Concerned Women for America to criticize the president's faith.
President Obama, who himself may have problems believing in the Christian faith, should at least, as the President of the United States, honor the traditions and the foundation of our country, which is based in Judeo-Christian beliefs, the belief that there is a God and that we owe him respect.
Wow. Joining us now is Reverend Dr. Welton Gaddy. He's a Baptist minister from the great state of Louisiana. He is president of the Interfaith Alliance. Reverend Gaddy, Welton, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Rachel.
I have to ask first for your reaction to that. What I saw is an attack on the president's religiosity from Concerned Women for America.
Well, it's the same old story that comes from the religious right all the time, and that is you're measured in your religious authenticity by whether your political views square with their political views and by whether or not you heed whatever they say as truth and do things the way they want you to do it. President Obama did stick with tradition today, except for the last 8 years when President George Bush had celebrations, observations of the Day of Prayer in the White House. And the criticism leveled at President Obama is there because he didn't do the Day of Prayer observance just exactly like his predecessor did.
Well, and I had to ask you about one detail about this. James Dobson's wife heads a group that calls itself the National Day of Prayer Task Force. If you go to their website, they say it is the official website for the National Day of Prayer, and that it struck me strange. I mean, if it's really a National Day of Prayer, isn't what she's doing sort of like calling yourself the chairman of the 4th of July? Isn't it a little weird?
Yeah, and in charge of prayer, and she leveled the same kind of criticism at the president, actually, that the woman just did on your program now. That task force has assumed authority for the National Day of Prayer. And if you push them, they'll say, oh, no, we don't have any ties with government. But the fact is that during the Bush administration, President Bush brought them into the White House, allowed them to do the National Day of Prayer precisely as they wanted to do it. Now, there's a problem there because you gave a beautiful description of the role that religion is to play in the nation by definition of the Constitution. But if you look at the task force agenda, not only did they attempt to co-opt the Day of Prayer and make it theirs, they set new rules for it and said that if you're going to participate in the National Day of Prayer with us, which we want you to do, you've got to say that the Bible is the Word of God without error, and you've got to say that Christianity is an exclusive religion in that it is the only way to do religion with which God is pleased. That, in a nation that is the most religiously pluralistic nation in the world, in which some people pray and some meditate and some think and some support the nation in another way. I don't like the fact that any president tries to tell religious people or any people when to pray or if to pray, any more than I like to see religious leaders trying to tell the American people how to vote.
Well, does that mean that you would prefer that there wasn't a National Day of Prayer at all? I have to admit that just in terms of my beliefs about the separation of church and state, not at all about my religious beliefs or lack thereof, the idea of there being an official legal prayer day strikes me, it rubs me a little bit the wrong way. It seems a little unconstitutional to me.
Well, it also seems a little bit religiously hypocritical because in most traditions, authentic prayer and meditation are acts that are done alone for the spiritual communication and meditation of the one involved. And all of the protests that we're seeing today is not in favor of prayer as defined in historic religious traditions. It's about public prayer. And I have always argued, whether you're talking about the National Day of Prayer or whether you're talking about enforcing prayer in school, the issue is not prayer. The issue is proselytization, doing something in public as a religious act that is meant to convince others to do things exactly the way you do, or feel guilty about it, or move to the periphery of society.
Reverend Dr. Welton Gaddy, president of the Interfaith Alliance and a deep thinker on such issues. Proud that you're my friend. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight, Welton.
Take care, Rachel.
All right. Still to come.